Aloha and welcome to the Na Pali Coast, a stunning and remote wilderness area on the far side of the Hawaiian island of Kauai. In this video we are going to take you on an adventure along the Na Pali Coast with Captain Andy's sailing, as we cruise under towering sea cliffs, cavort with playful dolphins, snorkel with turtles and sail along the epic wild oceans of Kauai's most remote coastline, with some epic eats thrown in for good measure. There is so much to see and take in on this epic 6-hour catamaran cruise, so come along for the ride. The Na Pali Coast is a rare example of a truly wild and undeveloped part of Hawaii. It is so remote and inaccessible it was considered sacred to the Hawaiians, and many members of royalty were interned here due to the solitude, and the mysterious coast is shrouded in legend. The road network around Kauai was never completed, and this area of the coast is completely cut off from either side, and there are almost no man-made structures anywhere on the entire coast. The only exception are a few small restrooms and a single one-way trail. You can drive up to a couple of lookouts at the top, and there are several ridge trails high up as well, but these only give access to the high ground. The actual coast is only accessible via a brutal hike along the 11-mile one-way Kalalau Trail. You hike in and out on your own over some very rough and exposed terrain. Only a handful of permits are issued daily for this hike, so the whole coast is almost completely cut off. Throughout the day, dozens of helicopters will soar overhead, which is a fantastic way to see the coast, but quite expensive. We did a doors-off tour, and you can see this amazing flight by clicking above or in the description. Other than that, the only way to experience the coast is from the sea. This is how the early settlers did it, and there are still traces of these on the landscape, and this is how we chose to visit on our recent trip. There are several methods of visiting the coast by sea. There are kayak tours, but these only get you to a small part of the coast. Rigid inflatable boats that offer thrilling adventure rides along the coast, and the more sedate and enjoyable sailing catamaran tours, which was our choice for this trip, as we wanted to take along the big camera to get some epic coastal shots. Our choice of tour provider was the incredible Captain Andy's, one of Kauai's premier sailing outfits. We chose the day tour on the newer Star class vessel as we wanted the maximum luxury, but we also wanted to snorkel, and the Sunset Cruise does not offer this. We have links in our description if you want to book your own Captain Andy's adventure. This tour cost a whopping $245, but this was a 5 to 6 hour trip, and we were willing to splurge to get to see the coast in the most style. We arrived nice and early for our 7:15 AM check-in, and we were still a little groggy from the early start, but there was free coffee available to help us come around. This is a big operation with several tours leaving at the same time, so it felt a little chaotic, but it was an organised chaos, and everything actually ran really smoothly as we were ushered down to our vessel. Here we met inside the cabin for a safety briefing and an intro into what the day entails. We were then heading out the harbour, horns blaring, must be nice for the locals, and voyaging off onto the ocean. Naturally, first order of business is breakfast. This was basic but delicious, with self-serve pineapple coconut muffins, fruit platters and juiced tea or coffee. Nothing fancy, but the muffins were incredible. The outward leg is pretty boring, at least for most people. We were using the last available cell service to catch the end of a vital soccer match back home in Europe, so we were well entertained, if appearing a little odd to the rest of the guests. But overall, this coast is a little bit lackluster. Honestly, it's not too bad, and quite beautiful, and gently sailing along the stunning blue waters is no hardship. But it's just not a patch on what was coming up, and the near constant ocean spray was a little aggravating. We knew we would get wet on this cruise, but we would have preferred to wait for the snorkeling. We got some nice views of Waimea Canyon and Mount Waialele, and some views of the mysterious and forbidden Niihau, which was much less mysterious and forbidden the day before when we visited on a dive expedition. Check the link above for that. After around an hour of gentle cruising, the crew changed direction as the first highlight of the trip was spotted, the resident pod of spinner dolphins. As we pulled into a sheltered cove, the dolphins instantly headed to the boat as they used the bow waves to rest. For around 10 minutes, these beautiful creatures followed along our steady progress, riding the wave and giving us amazing views of them as they rested in our wake. The water literally looking like a swimming pool, begging for us to jump in and join them. But that would have been highly aggravating to the crew and highly illegal, so maybe don't do that. Instead, we just spent our time cruising along, observing the dolphins. After the dolphin encounter, we rounded a headland and we were here, the Na Pali Coast. All that grueling relaxing on a luxury catamaran had finally paid off, and we got our first look at the coast from ground level. and it really is stunning. The Catamaran slowly makes its way along the coast, offering views of the towering cliffs, stunning waterfalls, cut-off beaches, and epic sea caves. The tours on the smaller, more nimble inflatables actually enter these caves, but our cat is too large, so we just peer in from the outside. The crew regaled us with tales of the ancient Hawaiians and pointed out various points of interest, such as old structures, burial valleys, and hikers making their way along the Kalalau Trail. This part of the cruise was breathtakingly epic, as the stunning sea cliffs tower up to 4,000 feet above us. These have been eroded in such a stunning fashion and look like no other valley anywhere on Hawaii. It was still pretty early and the low sun and harsh shadows made capturing the scene fairly challenging, but this is more beautiful than anything you will have ever seen in your life. As we pressed on up the coast, we got lucky with the conditions and the seas remained calm, allowing us to get quite a bit further up the coast than usual. This added a few bonus waterfalls onto our list. After getting to our furthest point after around 2 hours of cruising, all under the power of the diesel engines, the crew turned the boat away from the coast and headed out into the blue, hoping to pick up some better winds and raise the mainsails so we could all enjoy some peaceful sailing under the natural power of wind. You really do not notice the quite quiet engines of the boat, that is until they kill them and lift the sails, and the whole world becomes ultimately peaceful. The crew cannot guarantee every trip they will be able to get under the sails, but they do their best, and we were really on the limit as the speed was very slow, almost barely moving. Even when they hoisted the booster head sail, it made little difference. But this was not about speed, it was about pure pleasure as the boat tiptoed along nearly silently. As we were peeling away from the coast, the stunning views got even better, with the entire coast rising up in full panoramic glory. It's a stunning coastline up close, but from a little distance, it's truly magnificent. We had a sister ship running just off our port side, and this gave us some great advertising shots for Captain Andy's. It's just a shame we weren't getting paid. This was the highlight of an amazing cruise, and we still had a lot of the cruise left to go, but we still feel it had peaked. But with views this good, it's a hell of a high peak. After a peaceful 30 minutes or so on the sail, it was time to head to our only stop of the trip. The Snorkeling Stop is picked on the day based on the best conditions, but this one was right back at the beginning of the coast at the foot of the towering Makaha Ridge. The conditions were basically perfect, the ocean looking largely like a mill pond flat swimming pool. The only real complaint was the lack of light. As we were in the shadow of the cliff, it felt a little dark and gloomy, and due to this, there was very little in the way of coral growth, and the reef itself was not the most thriving we have seen. As you can see, the water was a touch murky, dark, and while there were some fish around, this was not a marquee snorkeling spot. This was not helped by the overzealous lifeguarding. Every time we headed to an interesting spot, we were told we were too far away from the group. While we understand some people require a certain level of hand-holding in the water, there are different levels of competence, and it is fairly obvious I can be let off the leash a little. We know they have insurance issues and are terrified of lawsuits, but I only wanted to head over to the quiet, interesting reefy areas rather than looking at algae-covered boulders and other people's fins. Still, for most people this would be desirable, but on the whole the snorkeling spot was pretty forgettable. Once you had finished snorkeling, it was time for the barbecue lunch. This had been sizzling away for some time now and smelt amazing. There was a choice of beef burger or the highly recommended garlic and herbed grilled chicken breast. These were really good and much needed after a long morning on the ocean, a hearty and healthy tasty lunch. And most importantly, it was now past midday and we had done snorkeling, so the bar was open. It was a little limited, just a selection of beers and wines, but that's all we needed. And they stocked longboard lager, so I was happy, and Kate's Chardonnay was reasonable if not spectacular. With the drinks flowing and the music playing, all that was left was a relaxing cruise back to the port. But it didn't quite work out that way. The trade winds had really picked up and the journey back was blocked by some pretty large rollers, making life on deck pretty exciting. Most people ran for cover of the main cabin and the back of the vessel, but we were more stupid than this and spent the time riding the bow and getting air on the cargo nets at the front. This was far wilder than the footage suggests, as the front of the vessel rose 10 to 12 feet as it rode over the waves. It was a lot of fun, but left anyone at the front far soggier than you might have intended. But of course, if this is not your thing, you can always hide at the back. But don't expect any kid who has seen Moana not to want to voyage on the bow of the vessel. Overall, this was a phenomenal day out. The low points, such as the snorkeling and long steam out, were all still pretty awesome. And overall, maybe the cruise suffers a little from its high points being so high. Honestly, some of the views of this mesmeric and unique coastline will stay with you forever. We have journeyed all over Hawaii and seen just about every view and vista going, but this coast is and always will be the most majestic. There is a reason they have been featured in so many Lost World type movies and why they look so much like something straight out of Hollywood. It is a forgotten coast and has truly avoided the human hand and is still as stunning today as when the early settlers of the island first laid eyes on them all those centuries ago. That is a rare thing, and getting this unique oceanic view of it is really special. The cost of these tours is high, but you get a lot for your money, and we couldn't have been better looked after by Captain Andy's crew. In fact, they looked after us a little bit too well during the snorkeling, but we don't want to dwell on that, as that's a small and specific hiccup in an otherwise flawless tour. We will definitely book with Captain Andy's again on our next trip, and now I have the big camera shots in the bag, we will probably book the adventure tour next, and hopefully during whale season, where things go up an extra notch again. Mahalo for watching. We still have a lot more Hawaii content in the can, ready to be uploaded, so make sure you like and subscribe so you know when that drops. And plans are already in our place for our next amazing USA adventure, so stay tuned for that. Bye for now.